Welcome to this Insights interview from the Payments Association. And this month's VIP guest has achieved what so many executives dream of, leading the business of a world-class global company in every country outside the US. So as someone who's proven his versatility and cultural empathy in places as diverse as Mexico and France, I first got to know Rafa professionally when he was responsible for card services for American Express in the UK. And personally, I know him as a community player. He's always caring for others and those around him. He's a true family man. So please welcome the President International Consumer Services at American Express, Rafa Marquez.
Hello, how are you? I'm very happy to be here. It's a privilege to be able to spend some time with you guys, and especially with my very good friend Tony.
Well, thank you. So look, at the start of every Insights interview from the Payments Industry's Hall of Fame, I ask my guest how they stay motivated. You know, what makes them go the extra mile when faced with balancing challenging jobs, jet lag, home lives, hangovers, and all the stuff that involve incredible calls on their time and energy. So what is it that continues to motivate you, Rafa, day in, day out?
It's a good question. I would put it in two or three things. One is I get a ton of energy from my family, right? I have a beautiful family, 4 children, been married for, it's going to be close to 25 years next year. So I get a lot of energy from them. I get a lot of support, of cheering when I'm down. So it's very, very comfortable. And I have also had the privilege to move with my family around. And I remember I was having a conversation with my boss at the first point when I moved from Mexico to Spain. And he asked me, how are you? And I told him, listen, when I moved with my family to a new country, if your family is in the right place, it's paradise. If it is not, probably it will just precipitate something that will happen eventually. But I discovered I was in paradise, and I'm still in paradise. So that's the first time. The second one is I am an extrovert. And by extrovert, I mean I process information and make decisions by debating topics with people. I need that, and you know what? I don't know if it is my profile or what, but I tend to absorb an immense amount of energy from those interactions. So the fact that I get the ability to fly around the world and meet with people from different cultures, backgrounds, etc., and ideas gives me a ton of energy. The third and final one is I like to enjoy life as well. So I like a good glass of wine, the same as I like to go in my fixed bike now indoors in the winter, in the miserable mornings in London. So I try to get energy by exercising a little bit and enjoying life and going out.
Very nice, a bit of balance. And so somebody who likes to travel internationally, the lockdown must have been quite challenging.
Oh my God, it has been. I spent 2 years without going to visit my family in Mexico, and it took a toll. And I am a little bit, I need to tell you, I'm a little bit desperate. I would love for the world to be a little bit more open right now and give us the opportunity to jump in planes and visit other places. But the reality is we are where we are, and it's going to be a slow burn until we come back to a more open and an accepting world that if you need to travel for work, you're allowed to come without any quarantining or anything like that. It's still not far away.
We'll get there. So let's get right now to bringing our viewers up to date with what's happening at American Express. You know, it's a company that employs 75,000 plus people. Its activities span the globe, and certainly Amex was, if I may call you Amex, was one of the founding fathers of payments. You know, from the traveler's check way back, and then the charge cards, early stuff. So, you know, but also, and this may be just my perception, it's a pretty private company, and it has its particular formula that really works. It plays a unique role in the ecosystem with its own unique model. So, what would you say? What would you say was the magic formula, or you feel like the secret sauce of American Express?
Um, it's a very interesting question. Let me give you some history. Amex is 172 years old.
Wow.
Uh, we started as a freight forwarding company in the US. Mr. Wells and Mr. Fargo started a business that transported goods from California to New York mostly. We opened our first international office 6 months after the company was founded in Acapulco, believe it or not. That was
Hmm.
our first international office.
Wow.
So we have through the course of the 171 years, 172 years of history, we have transformed several times, right? So the company transformed from being a freight forwarding company to being a travelers company to launching the traveler checks to following McNamara's invention on the plastic money to becoming, I would say, a much more digitized business, and we have always continued to try to innovate. It's a company that has always played between um, keeping history, heritage, and what we're good, the segments that we serve, etc. Plus, trying to innovate as much as we can. Um, and we have had beautiful moments. We have had not that good moments, right? So,
Mm.
be it with we lost a very big partner in the U.S. It was publicly announced. We lost Costco, right? And we had a redefining moment at that point in time, and we came out of it stronger. We refound ourselves in the premium space. We identified the need to invest in customer value and um, to push our ambitions to get to be a bigger and a better serving company to our customers. So that's I don't know if that is the secret sauce, but it's a company that has a very strong leadership culture. Um, I I always joke. I had the privilege of meeting Al Kelly. He was our global consumer head in Amex. Now he's
Mhm.
triple visa. Jamie Dimon had a stint in Amex.
Mm. Mm.
Gordon Smith that runs Chase payments products, or he used to because he retired like last week. Um,
Yeah.
and like that, you have a very long list of leaders that have gone through the company, and we are a company that actually enjoys having people for a long period of time, and that also brings and preserves knowledge, history, and ambition, and where the business wants to go, etc. I mean, our CEO has been a company 36 years. Um,
You see, I think there's something about what you're describing there, which is going to preserve, if you like, the cultural DNA of the organization that permeates through everything that you do, and maybe that's, overlay on top of that desire to retain the permanence of its people and develop its leadership. You're also overlaying this innovative mindset, and maybe it's a combination of those two. It's almost a paradox, the consistent long-term retention of the right staff with an attitude to continue to change the products and services you deliver. Maybe there's something magical in that combination that's a bit unusual.
I think it is. Perhaps the only last ingredient that I have not mentioned is uh, no company is perfect when it comes to servicing customers, but we aspire to be better than anyone else in the financial services. That's honestly our aspiration, and we leave no stone unturned to try to deliver on that commitment. Right. So there were several media advertisements that spoke about that, and we have not lost our mojo on that. We still think that providing customers with the best service that can be achieved is one of our cornerstones to have a successful business and one that you can transform.
Yeah, brilliant. So I was going to ask you what you're going to do to preserve the status of the company when there's so much competition coming through, but you kind of described it, really.
It's it's very interesting times. I think that we live in times of perhaps excessive amount of information. And if I can put it in an analogy, there's a lot of noise in the industry. Sometimes that noise is music. Sometimes it's just background noise, right?
I love that. I love that.
And I think that it's very, very difficult to discern initially what's noise versus what's music.
Yes.
But if you give it a little bit of time, actually, the rhythm will put it in the right place. Your mind.
I like that. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to steal that analogy. There's so much noise. Some of it's music, and we're going to go with the rhythm. That's very, very clever. Okay, so in light of the fact that you've had threats in the past and you've adapted to them, what are the most pressing regulatory, political, even policy threats you see to the firm in the years ahead?
Let me go first to one that is perhaps a little bit contentious, but I need to say it because of my experience and my history. And then I will go into more specifics on 2 or 3 topics. About 15, 20 years ago, a developed country was normally described as a place where the regulation is stable, the regulator is predictable, there's very few surprises, and things operate normally.
Yes.
With what has happened in the last 15 to 20 years is most regulations have become interpretative. In other words, there's no right or wrong anymore. And the shade of gray that is applied depends on what the public interest it is at that certain point in time, right? So with that background, I will tell you, I think that the entire payments ecosystem has a lot to upgrade on a few elements, right? There's the threat, I would call it, of price regulation, right? So interchange regulation, discount revenue price regulation in some countries, the way that we need to communicate the prices to customers and how you need to, in the spirit of simplifying for the population, you also not necessarily portray the products in the right way. The good example of that would be the APRs and the lines that you need to use to calculate that sometimes are a little bit artificial, let me put it like that. So that is one. The anti-money laundering regimes are becoming incredibly tight, and the interpretation of the requirements is also evolving so frequently. And sometimes there is dissonance between one body of regulation like AML and another one of privacy, let me put it like that.
Yes.
And so when you come to the conflict and we ask somebody for guidance, you get the guidance for the AML regulator, you get the guidance for the privacy regulator, but they don't necessarily work together, right?
Yes.
So I think that dissonance is also very important. And the final point that I would say is privacy, data ownership, who owns, who controls, who can do what with each piece. These are probably the 3 elements that I believe are impacting more. Of course, there's not regulatory, but the element around disruption and methods that are changing the structure. But I think that those are the ones that, not to keep me at night, but at least that I think in some of my nightmares.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I personally, I don't think it's easy to be a regulator. I look at I look at the FCA's declared intent to be more adaptive, innovative, and assertive. It's quite interesting when I hear a regulator wanting to be more assertive. I feel quite uncomfortable because, in a way, one of the reasons why the marketplace in the UK, in particular, has fostered and nurtured innovative and progressive businesses and organisations is because we have had a what I'd call an enabling regulator rather than a constraining one. As soon as you decide to be more assertive, you're potentially going to constrain that innovation. And it's through innovations that we end up giving more value to consumers. It's through innovation that we're able to give the consumers things that help them pay and be paid better. And so ultimately their lives improve. And if we have a regulator that doesn't get that, then I think there's a potential worry. That's my worry. They're gonna have bigger. They're gonna want bigger boots.
On one hand, I agree with you. I think that it is true that assertiveness in a regulator will require let me put it like this, a very deep and specific understanding on where are they going to apply, if I can use another analogy, acupuncture, to try to solve one issue. Sometimes the issue is that point has several nervous terminals that you need to consider as you're applying that regulation, right? So, and I think that, for instance, competition, price controls, and reduction, etc. I don't think that they foster the right environment for innovation. And while I agree, I fully understand that there is a need to have also a way tighter control of how the funds are being inputted into the electronic payment transfers, etc. I also think that there needs to be perhaps a recognition that there are the ecosystem needs to be shielded, not every part of it. And that makes it a little bit more cumbersome when you need controls on every single part of it, rather than make sure that everything is actually tight.
Yes. That makes it great.
And it's very difficult. I know it is incredibly difficult, but it's the world that we're living, right?
That's true. You can't complain. It's benefited many people. So in terms of those issues that you referred to, then there's two or three I'd love to touch on and get your views. First, let's talk about open banking. You know, as a bank scheme with its own bank and a scheme with its own acquirer, Amex enjoys the benefits of a three-party model. How does open banking affect the firm?
Well, let me perhaps rewind for a second. We enjoy the benefits of having an integrated model, right? The American Express model is a model where you own the relationship with the card member, you own the processing and transacting flows, also known as the network, and you also own the relationship with the merchants. What people sometimes do not realize is that you also need to invest in the three of them, right? In other words, in order for us to preserve that, we need to have a continuous set of investment that enable us to continue to operate in that world where the vast majority of the payments are actually outside of our ecosystem. So that's one of the elements that is sometimes important to think when you think about American Express. And why is it that we're different? We actually have decided to integrate the businesses. Now, open banking is a layer that covers some of these relationships of the customer, right? Be it because the spirit of it is to try to generate competition, but the vast majority of the activities that you can set up are based on the interactions with customers, be it on the way that you present information, the way that you process the underwriting or the let's say the onboarding of customers through digital means and the integration with APIs with the back-end processes that normally end up in a very old platform of financial services. The second element is the payment initiation services. I think that the only piece that I would say is, while I think that we're learning, all of us, Amex included, but all of us, about how to improve the way that we interact digitally with our customers and how can we present ourselves in a simpler, more a nimbler way. Some of the issues is that when it comes about money, it's a lot about trust, right?
Yes.
Do you trust that the company that you're dealing with is going to be there for you if there's a problem? And that is a very big barrier that sometimes we tend to ignore.
I think that's so true. And American Express is a trusted brand, if ever there was one.
Yeah. It is one of our heritages, right? Although we are a bank holding company, reality is we're mostly a company that facilitates payments and funds itself through the generation of cash with our business, right? So it's interesting. We will come to a point where electronic transfer of funds is so common between us that people will not necessarily care about which institution holds it, right? But it's about that is going to take time. I don't think it's going to change from one day to the next.
And the issue of trust is highly relevant to the next thing I want to just touch on, which is to do with what some people are referring to next generation of currencies, digital currencies. Lots has been written about those. We've had the House of Lords report in earlier this year on challenging and questioning whether there's even a use case. We've had the Payments Association's green paper, providing a roadmap towards a retail CBDC in the UK. How seriously does American Express take the opportunity and threat of a digital currency issued by central banks? And how do you think that will affect the landscape in the next few years?
I think that there are, perhaps let me answer that in two ways. One, I think that although I don't necessarily understand the full extent of how cryptocurrencies are going to influence the payments ecosystem, I believe that they're here to stay, and it might evolve and become more of an asset class rather than a payment class. It's still a little bit debatable where will it land. But I think that they've now been with us for enough time, and there's enough money behind it to struggle to see it disappear. I don't know if I'm making sense, but that would be my first. Now, there are two or three elements in this, right? One is will the distributed ledger technology. Let me go first there. It's a beautiful piece of technology. It's incredibly secure, and it will probably generate so much benefit in the chain of payments and controls that you need to establish. That is, without a doubt, we're doing several tests. Behind the scenes, some of them are public, some of them are private, and we will continue to do that. Some of them for international fund transfers, some of them for just the way we store and access information from customers, etc. It's very very interesting. The second one is, well, will they ever become like a mainstream mode of funding payments? That's where things start getting tricky, right? If you believe that, as I do, knowing the source of funds is a mandatory requirement by regulation, like it is in AML, well, these things are designed not to know what the source of funds is, right? So hence,
absolutely.
I don't know. I don't know if they will become. I know that the Visa just launched a card with a cryptocurrency. It's in social media all the time. Um, how is it going to work? I honestly I don't know, and there I have more reservations.
And you know what? I love that kind of you're kind of open and uncertain, and I think that's a healthy place. We'll all have to, so long as we own our uncertainty and are open to this the future revealing itself and investing and trying things out, which is and I hear you saying you're trying and testing stuff. We are as well. We're facilitating that. That's how we'll discover the future, and I really hope that the parliamentarians behind the recent report are continuing to be open, because I do think that unless we take some leadership, then the potential threat of the digital yuan program, which has been developed in China and is now rolling out across the Olympics, Winter Olympics, does represent quite a big threat. And I think we should be mindful of that.
Yeah. I know that at some point you're going to be asking me about the U.S. and the rest of the world. Perhaps this is a good time to bring that to board.
Yeah.
You know, I can't refrain myself from telling you a little bit of my experience, right? So I was working in 1994 for a financial institution in Mexico, and they were talking about a this magical thing that was about to come, that was the chip in the card. Okay? And it was going to take over the world, and it was going to revolutionize payments forever. Well, listen, I don't want to be ultra cynical, although sometimes I am, but
Yeah.
the largest payments business in the world is probably China. The US is the second, and sometimes, depending on how you measure it, it might be the first. But the US is still largely operating on Max Stripe.
That is funny, isn't it? I mean, it's funny for me. I mean, or rather, I think that's funny, but maybe I don't know.
You know, Tony, the reality is the following, right? It's difficult to change human habits, number one. And number two is the amount of investment required to change all the infrastructure of a country to
That's
one
true.
new piece of technology is monumental. This is
Yes.
why I honestly believe that the convergence of at least the way we use payments is a little bit utopical. I'm not saying that it will not happen to a certain extent, but listen, look at Africa, right? We have very little business in Africa, but the one that we have through partners. And Africa seems to have just leapfrogged the card business. It's more on phone messages, right?
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
And in Asia, I mean, Japan is very strong in cards, but China, it's all apps.
I know. Yeah, they don't need a payment product like a card. It's all on here. It's all on there.
You don't even need a terminal in the store, right? You just need a QR code. It's the point is, I think that convergence is not necessarily the way that I would think that the world is going to go. It's probably going to be more interoperability. That's the way that I think that the world is going to evolve.
So what are you saying, that we're going to end up with a series of different regional ecosystems which have different but interoperable means of so they're different. So Latin America might have its own particular payments culture, and it's okay because the way in which it allows money to be moving internationally, in particular, and for us to be able to buy products in Latin America and export them, is interoperable with our method. Is that what you're saying? It's like rather than everybody, the tide rising at the same pace, we'll have some people moving at this level and some people moving at that level, maybe, but they can talk to each other.
I think that from the device that will be used, yes, that's a little bit of what I think is going to happen. In the end, electronic payments is just if I want to simplify it to the limit, it's just a speed of light transfer of ones and zeros, right? And what device you use for that is
Mm,
irrelevant, right?
mm,
But definitely some parts of the world require stronger customer authentication. Europe is a good example of that.
yeah.
And has that prevented the usage of cards, even of checks, for God's sake? I mean, not a lot of people remember, but the chip was first utilized in France, and it was a method that was utilized with debit cards to reduce checks. And still, France is one of the largest check users in the world. You go to the supermarket, you can pay with a check. It's just
Wow.
incredible.
Yeah, it's fascinating. This is what must be one of the nicest things about your job is you have the whole planet, well, apart from America, and in a way you've kind of got America too because you've got to reference it. I think it must be fascinating. And one of the things I wanted to ask was the differences between the different regions, and you've started to do that a little bit, which has been good.
Yeah, so there are multiple differences, right? Asia is um, has, I would say, two or three characteristics. If you think about it, Asia is probably the first place in the world where localization of schemes, networks, etc., started proliferating. Right? You think about it, the JCBs of the world, the China Union Pays of the world. It, it's the first place where that phenomenon of localization started. India with UPI and with RuPay, etc., it's also gone that route, and it probably has generated even the question in other geographies around the world to say, if these guys have created this emporium of fairly low cost transfer of money, is that the future? And there's experiments. I'm pretty sure that you're aware
Mm,
everywhere in Europe around, should we integrate our own schemes and blah blah blah,
yes,
etc. The
yes.
same thing in Latin America, the same thing in Canada.
Mm,
There's the same conversation. So that's one element that I think it's perhaps very defining about Asia, and that has brought them the ability to actually play with different engagement mechanisms with the consumers and with merchants and corporations, right?
mm.
Uh, First time I saw an Alipay transaction, I couldn't believe it that the guy needed to shake up the thumb, and that was just to see if they get a reward or not.
Yeah, very good.
In Europe, listen, let's face it, right? We are cheap land. Uh, Everything here is in cheap. Contactless has taken up in a way that we didn't anticipate it was going to be that fast. Now, um, it's great because it has enabled a lot of commerce through the pandemic. Is it going to evolve even further? Well, once you have all the NFC infrastructure installed, the jump to mobile payments is a lot faster, or it can be a lot faster.
But I think what's interesting is the QR code infrastructure. I don't know whether you agree with this. I think what we've got works well. I can pay with my phone. My American Express card pops up here, touch and go. Why do I then want to have a QR code as a replacement for that? It seems like a huge investment for no discernible benefit.
I agree with you, but there's about 120 million Chinese going around the globe that they're used to use that payment method.
Mm,
So some of our partners in some of the hotspots of tourism in the world tell us that they need it because of the Chinese travelers, right, and the Asian
mm,
travelers. And this is why I tell you, interoperability is it's impossible to avoid. It's
yeah. That's a great theme. Rafa, I'm sad we're starting to run out of time. I've got lots of other questions I was going to ask you, but I'm going to ask you two personal questions. One, what do you do outside work? What's your thing outside work?
I chauffeur for my kids on the weekends. I like cycling. You know that. I'm not the best of cyclists, but I am an enthusiast.
Yeah.
I I would characterize myself as a very lousy golfer, but I enjoy playing the game. And I love, my passion is cooking. Okay, so
Ah.
if I was ever to restart my career, probably I would try to be a professional chef. So
There we go. There you go. Well, look, there's a little hidden component, a hidden aspect of Rafa Marquez I didn't know about. That's brilliant. Well, look, I'll tell you what. You and I both have undergraduate sons, and just imagine if we were advising a new graduate coming into our industry, who's thinking about following in your footsteps. What advice would you give them?
when it comes to career, sometimes I start by trying to bring people to the following reality, which has been my reality. Sometimes in life, you need luck, right? And there's nothing you can do to get luck. But the thing that I would recommend you think long and hard is, when an opportunity appears, you need to be ready to take it. That's what you can do about luck. And that means that you need to be willing to run the risk. You need to be willing to put the extra hours. You need to be hungry, right? And that doesn't mean like over ambitious. I pride myself of being a very down to earth guy, and I think that that's the way that we all should live our lives. But yes, you need to be hungry. You need to be willing to accept that you need to do more and you need to be better. And that's what I would recommend my children, and that's what I would recommend anyone that wants to progress, right? The way to progress is realize that there's things that you don't know that you need to learn and you need to practice. And the last one is perhaps surround yourself with people that are trying to make you better, not necessarily people that are telling you that you're doing everything okay.
Very good. Very good. I love that advice. I wish somebody had given me that advice when I was starting out. Well, look, sadly, our time has come up. The members of the Payments Association and others will have, I'm sure, enjoyed hearing your insights. So the President, International Consumer Services at American Express, Rafa Marquez, thank you so much for sharing your insights in this Insights interview.
Thank you very much. It has been my pleasure, and I hope next time around you'll be with a beer in our hand. So
I look forward to it. Thanks very much.
Cheers. Bye.